You gotta love the PlayStation demos. They bring home so many unique memories to the forefront. They give us the opportunity to experience and get a glimpse of some of the many classics that would be seen on the PlayStation. And while some of us never got to own these games, the demos were the next best thing. And in many cases, we got just as much experience and fun at the demos more than anything else. So here in this video, we are going to be looking at one of the PlayStation Picks demos that showcases different games, all from different genres. So let us dive in and experience this unique demo and what it had to offer fans back in the day. Star Wars Rebel Assault 2 provided a great expansion for fans of the iconic movie series that tells a very different and yet unique story to give fans a glimpse of what it felt like to be part of the action. And it was one of the many games of this time that utilised live action sequences with real life interactable characters that presented many scenes that would have been familiar from the movies themselves, but allowed you, the player, to have control over various elements from combat to flying ships and even getting involved in rail shooter elements, being able to interact with space and universe environments, being able to battle all of the other ships in the vicinity while telling its own unique story. It was a very cool idea when it released back in 1995 on the PC and then in early 96 on the PlayStation, and provided a great outlay for fans of the movie franchise to really gain a better overall experience and to just dive deeper into the lore behind the Star Wars universe. With the game coming on 2 discs, gave more than enough appeal for players to play for quite some time, but this demo definitely gave you a taste of what was to come.
Good job, kid. Now let's go find that freighter.
Disruptor would end up being the first game ever developed and released by Insomniac Games that would see life on the PlayStation, and this company would go on to become a legend in the video game space, developing and creating many iconic franchises. But their first entry into the games market is also considered by many to be one of the most underappreciated classics in the games realm, but it's also considered as one of the best all-round and in-depth FPS shooters on the PlayStation. So when we managed to get our hands on a demo that gives you a glimpse of the game's story, to play through some of the levels of a marine that's trying to stop an impending threat on Earth, you got a real taste of what was possible, which took many elements and ideas from the iconic Doom, but presented it in its own unique style, to add a futuristic theme to it that was beyond anything that had been seen before at that time. Plus it's also one of the best looking FPS games on the system, with great use of shooting mechanics, combat mechanics, and even power-ups that give you the access to heal your character, to use various like shockwaves, drains, blasts, even shields that you can use in different scenarios alongside of the guns and explosions. It's a very, very intriguing and yet unique game, and this demo that's on this disc is a very rare demo because there was demos previously on other demo discs that came with various magazines, but you only ever really got access to one level, and you might have got a few video demos showcasing some of the other levels, but this distinct demo gives you access to 3 playable levels, although relatively short, but they are all played from different difficulties. So each level will have you playing a level on easy, medium or hard, and you'll know when you get into the level with the mines that you would have seen on other demo discs, but this demo is put at the highest difficulty, and let's just put it this way, it will definitely test your skill level in reserve because this demo is tough, but it's still a lot of fun. It's a great game, solid experience, it's one of the best FPS shooters on the PlayStation, and for that reason alone you have to play this classic. It definitely deserves a lot more respect, and it should be talked about a lot more. It is a really, really good, solid game that everyone should try.
It's the Grand Prix of Europe at the Nürburgring, round 14 of the championship.
For most of us that played Formula 1 on the PlayStation, many of our first experiences would have come from playing the game on a demo, as not everybody had access to the full game, which gave you a glimpse of quite simply one of the most authentic racing or game experiences ever seen on a console game, or even yet in a video game at that point in time. For many of us growing up, being fans of racing cars and Formula 1 in general, you were so used to hearing the sounds of the cars, even the commentary from the legendary Murray Walker, and just the overall atmosphere and vibe that it presented. But to get to see it in a video game, but yet almost in a realistic format with the beautiful visuals and 32-bit 3D graphics, was beyond anything that had ever been witnessed before. While the PlayStation did have some many unique racers, but Formula 1 perfectly captured all the ambience and vibes of what you would have seen on TV growing up. No other game really in history up until that point had ever managed to do that. Not only were you hearing the commentary from Murray Walker, the game or the demo did actually give you access to many of the drivers and teams, so you could play as your favourites from Michael Schumacher to David Coulthard, Jean Alesi, among loads of others, and you got to play on the iconic Nürburgring track, so you could just imagine the excitement that you would have had to get the opportunity to relive some of your greatest memories, but to be part of the action. It was so surreal. Even for me personally, I'll never forget during the first experience of playing the PlayStation for the first time, getting to play many iconic games, but the demos in many cases were equally just as much fun as anything else, and a demo of Formula 1 was among that experience, and it just blew my mind, because being a fan of the sport growing up, to actually witness it in that context and knowing that you had control over the matter really was something else. It provided an experience that, in all honesty, very few games for me at that time have ever managed to capture, and I've never been able to relive that since. While games have evolved and look smarter, better, and have more detail, there's just something about this original concept going back to the early days of the PlayStation that just stood out, and that still stands out. It just captures that essence that no other game of its kind could do back then. So for that reason alone, you need to play this game if you're a fan of the sport. It is an absolute masterpiece in what it represents. The sounds of the cars would just draw you in. The level of detail was beyond anything ever seen at the time. In many cases, this was hands down one of the best and greatest looking racing games, or any game on the PlayStation, that really pushed the console to its limits at the time. And even for me personally, I still think that this game still has the best distinct sound of the car engines out of any Formula 1 game I've ever played. It's so close to the original for that time. It's just so iconic and almost hair raising at the same time, how it makes you feel. Very few games ever managed to do that, and this demo definitely did it in abundance. Last Chamber, when it released for both the PlayStation and Sega Saturn in 1996, was a very unique and obscure game. It was also one of the first ever multiplayer games to make full use of the multi-tap 4-player accessory that allowed you to play with 4 controllers, that sees you trying to survive in rooms filled with loads of traps where you have to deactivate a bomb that's attached to you, so you have to reach certain points, and depending on who you're playing as, you will be pinpointed as a unique colour, so you have to match the bomb with the colour that you're associated with in order to defuse the bomb before the time runs out, and if you don't, unfortunately it's game over and you'd be eliminated. But it was something that was definitely obscure but yet unique. It had so many distinct character styles and even gameplay elements that really hadn't been seen in games. It really was experimental for what it tried to do. While the game was overlooked by many, but it presented so many distinctive traits, from combat to platforming to puzzle solving. It combined so many different types of elements with the full intention of trying to survive and win the overall matches. And there was enough different game modes available in the full game in order to keep you playing for quite some time. So it was definitely a distinct experience that very few games ever managed to capitalise on in that time period. But with it being overlooked, it's still no excuse. This is one of those games that should be looked at and just dived into a lot more, because it does present a unique case study to showcase many of those elements that you can clearly see that have inspired many original ideas within games that you now see today. So it's interesting to go back to revisit many of these classics to see where those ideas came from, and this game does have that, and it's a lot better than you may think, and is a really good solid multiplayer experience, so it is worth a try. Too Extreme, released in late 96, early 1997 on the PlayStation, is a sequel to the popular ESPN Extreme games that sees players playing a variety of different style of sports, from rollerblading, skateboarding, biking and snowboarding, that expands on many ways of the original with improved graphics, more tracks and a variety of different modes in which to choose from. And the goal is to win races, but you also have to achieve points by proceeding through gates, completing tricks, hitting obstacles in the track while avoiding certain elements that can hinder your progress. And you also have to deal with other racers that will try to knock you off balance and even take you out of the equation altogether. As like the original game, it is very tough, with AI difficulty being ramped up to the highest, leaving you playing catch up for most of the race, and it will require a lot of dedication and skill in order to master the many intricate hurdles each course has to offer. So with this demo, it gives you access to one of the snowboarding levels, so your task is literally just to try and win at all costs. Mind you, it is very difficult, because with a lot of these demos you couldn't choose the difficulty, so you would end up having to play the game either on the hardest or medium difficulty, and for most players that would be tricky because it left you always trying to fight to even get anywhere near a position. While the game did improve over the original in many ways, it was still considered a tough game to master, but it was coming at a time when extreme sports were gaining in popularity, so the PlayStation definitely became home to many of these ideas to bring this sport into video game space. But still in many ways it's considered a classic, and it's a premise of the history of the PlayStation and its unique ideas, and how the console catered to so many different styles and dynamics that suited players of all ages and game types. So this is just another experience that should be revisited, just to see early events and years of the PlayStation and where the ideas came from. Spider the video game is a very obscure and unique 2.5D action platformer that sees players taking on the role of a cybernetic spider that has been implanted with the mind of its creator. The player must navigate 3D style environments, but strictly in a 2D playstyle, where they have to overcome many different hurdles to defeat many enemies and bosses along the way. And because it's a mechanical style spider, you will gain access to a variety of different weapons, from the likes of flamethrowers to rockets. It's a bit out there and obscure, but that adds to the whole dynamic of its style. And that again always comes back to the originality of ideas when games being released on the PlayStation back in the 90s. So this demo gives you a glimpse of one of the early levels in the game that sees you going through almost like a sewer level, where you can get used to the gameplay mechanics and style, but you also have to be mindful, as with any platformer, to be aware of your surroundings, because enemies can pop up when you least expect it, and you can also fall off ledges which will lead to your doom. But one of the nice elements about Spider is its visual presentation, as for its time it was a very good looking game with some really nice graphics and detail on the levels and textures that really stood out. But it's not without its gripes, as it is a very tough game with the controls and just trying to get used to the platforming elements, because you can move around all of the assets in the level pretty much, and you can move underneath them as well, so players can get put off. It'll take a bit of while to get used to everything that's happening in the game, which can cause a lot of confusion, but once you master the controls you will have a good solid experience in your hands, and this demo will provide that in abundance. While it's short, there's definitely enough here to give you a glimpse as to how good this game actually was, so it is worth a try and revisit. For that, Black Dawn, when it released for the PlayStation and Sega Saturn both in 1996 and early 1997 depending on the regions, provided a glimpse of 3D simulation flight mechanics, where you play as a helicopter, where you are tasked with different missions across a variety of different campaigns set in different territories, where you have to eliminate enemies, destroy various machines, tanks, while you also have to save hostages, and you can acquire different types of power-ups and weapon upgrades in order to help you advance throughout the campaigns. It was a very unique game for its time that gave you a glimpse of what was possible on the PlayStation and provided an outlet for fans of this style of flight simulator genre, and as a result the game received positive reviews in the magazines, praising the intense gameplay and especially with the music, as it really suited the style and presented an ambience and atmosphere that was beyond anything else seen in these type of games at the time. So this demo gives you a glimpse of what you can expect, and it has some decent graphics. There's a lot happening at the same time. You do have to be mindful of your surroundings. The demo is tough. You probably will die quite a number of times, which I did when playing, but it presents something that was truly unique for its time. If you're into these type of games, you will have a blast with this, literally, as there's really good animations for the explosions. There's a lot of detail even in the distance. There's just a lot going on that will definitely keep you on your toes when you're playing. Plus you can see the damage effects of the helicopter when you're getting shot at, as the screen will start to crack with the bullet holes and all of the other elements, so you'll know when you're starting to take a lot of heavy damage that you're near the end of no return. It's a very solid game that's reflective of its time and will appeal to fans of this type of genre, so it is worth the look just for that experience alone, and this demo will provide you with that. 10 Pin Alley is a fun multiplayer bowling simulation game that was released on the PlayStation in 1996 and on the Saturn and Windows PC in 97. The game would also get a re-release on the PlayStation Network in 2009 that gives you access to a variety of different characters, all with their own unique traits and abilities, while giving you the chance to play in a variety of different modes, from campaign to like multiplayer, tournament and even practice mode, with the game being praised for its realistic physics and ease of controllability. But more often than than not, the game is more noticeably known for its humorous behaviour from the characters themselves, making it to be a very fun experience, especially if you're playing with a group of friends. Even for its time, graphically it was very good also, with the character models and the designs. While the environments seemed and came across being a bit simplistic, they did look highly detailed. But it was something different when you look at the long line of games on the system. This was definitely more for a party style aesthetic that would appeal for fans if you wanted something a bit more short term and fun. It was great to play in short bursts with your mates. A solid multiplayer experience that for many is often overlooked but should be explored in more detail. So at least this demo managed to give you a glimpse of that back in the day. So for that reason alone, it should be looked at. When Bubsy released on the PlayStation in 1996 and early 1997, it was met with much criticism and is often considered by many to be one of the worst games or platformers ever created, not just on the PlayStation but in the games industry. As at that time when it was released, the game had been in development for some time, but due to whatever reasons, fell behind its release schedule, as many games, not just on the PlayStation, had come out before it, with Crash Bandicoot that set a unique standard, but then with the Nintendo 64 seeing Super Mario 64 released to the masses, that completely changed the landscape of 3D platformer games, and is still considered by many to be the best of its kind even to this day. That created a blueprint pretty much for every 3D platformer to follow. But unfortunately with Bubsy 3D, with its development processes, as it was being developed even longer before Mario 64 was released, it never had that blueprint. So it left with the game being and looking very simplistic in how it was designed, but at the same time overly difficult in many respects. But to say that it's one of the worst games ever, it's hard to agree or really disagree in that respect, as it does have some unique quirks and traits, but it depends on who's playing it really, and it will appeal to a select few style of players. I think with these type of games what usually happens is a lot of people usually jump on the bandwagon, because if one person says that it's bad, there's always a trend where people will follow, where a lot of people have a tendency not to really think for themselves. They're just thinking based off what everyone else's opinions is. But I think until you truly experience the game for yourself, only then can you make a valid opinion on the games. Even for my own time playing it, yes, it is a very tough game, and it's one of those games that will require a lot of dedication and patience in order to get the best out of it. But if you do put time into it, there's a decent experience to be had. But again, it won't be for everybody. That's the one thing to make clear with this. It just comes at a time really when other games had surpassed it. I genuinely think that if this game had been released very early on in the PlayStation's life cycle, say in the first couple of weeks or a couple of months, I think the game genuinely would have been a lot better received, because at the time when we look back at say 1994, 1995, to see any sort of 3D platformer in this context would have been a revelation in many regards, because there really would have been nothing like it out there. But I think the problem with this game is just at the timing. It was just released a little too late to make it worthwhile, because we already had Mario 64, Crash Bandicoot, plus many other iconic games. So this just fell to the bottom of the pile in that respect, which is a pity. But in many regards, because it's a piece of gaming history, it's still worth having a look at, just to experience the ideas and concepts behind these type of games and how they were developed back in the day. Ice hockey games were always very popular on the 16-bit console era, where you had many of the likes of the NHL games being released on the likes of the Sega Mega Drive and Super Nintendo that would reach varying heights of success, and were just good solid games in their own right and were a lot of fun. If you were a fan of this genre of game. It was interesting to see these games move into the modern era at the time of the PlayStation with 3D graphics and visuals that managed to capitalise and capture the feel and authenticity of the unique sport with its fast-paced nature and even elements of just overall fun. Plus you could get into an odd scrap or two with some of your opponents that also added into the mix that really captured that originality of the sport. And when NHL Face Off 97 released, it was met with positive reviews, many looking at those elements that I've just discussed that captures all of the unique traits of the sport, and it also provides a good solid experience. While the demo itself gives you access to play a single half of a game, but it's more than enough to give you an idea of this genre of game and how fun it can be, as it's very fast paced, it's very frantic, it's very in your face, and it's a very different style of sport that will appeal to many people, even fans, even the people that have never heard of or played the sport before. A lot of people will get into this as it's very, very competitive. It just is a lot of fun, and there was quite a number of ice hockey games released on the PlayStation, so this is definitely up there among the best of them, so it is worth trying out. There's not really an awful lot that you can say that you don't already know about Crash Bandicoot, an iconic game and series that started way back in 1996 that would see Crash go on to become Sony's iconic mascot for a period of time that set a standard for 3D platformer games in its entirety, with great visuals, great gameplay, challenging gameplay more to the point, but provided something unique that really set a standard for many games and series that followed, not just on the PlayStation but on different platforms as well. So with this demo it gives you access to one of the first levels in the game, and while the gameplay does come across and plays from a linear perspective, you do have access to a variety of different secrets that will give you an opportunity to explore some of the intricate elements of the levels. Just the distinctive design is so iconic, especially with these first levels in the game, and that's what people are most noticeable and familiar with Crash Bandicoot, as they've just stood out and it's instantly recognisable. While the demo is short, it has enough play appeal that definitely will have you coming back. It just is a fun game overall, and if you're a fan of the series, there's no reason why you wouldn't go back to play this demo. Grid Runner is a top-down, multiplayer style adventure game that was released on the PlayStation in 1996, Windows PC and Sega Saturn, that gives you the role to race across different types of environments and arenas, and your goal is to capture as many flags as you possibly can in order to win the matches. Where this game comes into its own is its multiplayer elements, as you can face off against your mates or opponents. But even on the single player mode it is very challenging and will provide enough elements to keep you playing for some time, as it has enough addictive qualities to keep you coming back for more. So you have to traverse through different types of bridges and even blocky style areas where you have to overcome or find ways over gaps or broken bridges or broken pieces of floor, and your goal is to find all of the flags in the level in order to win. But you also have to be mindful of people trying to stop stop you and take the flags off you, and then you have many other traps that are trying to take you out, from like gun turrets to bridges or environment elements collapsing. So there's so many distinct elements in the game that definitely will test your wits, and it was reflective in the reviews, as it did receive positive reviews across the board on all platforms, and many stating that they like the gameplay style, its unique twist on the multiplayer elements, but it's the multiplayer elements itself where the game was highly praised for its addictive quality and nature, and it's considered for its time one of the best multiplayer games on the PlayStation, with its great use of challenges, gameplay mechanics, and just variety of gameplay overall. So it is one of those games that is a lot of fun to pick up and play in short bursts. While challenging, there's enough unique appeal here that will cater to fans of this unique style of genre, and just presented something unique and experimental that often wasn't seen during that time. So for that reason alone, it is worth a look. So here we have looked at some of the many unique demos and games from iconic demo discs that brought the essence of the PlayStation to a whole new level, that gave players and fans a glimpse of the many games that were available so that people could see for themselves what was good and what they would like to experience. And as for many of us, some of our best experiences on the PlayStation are with these demo discs alone, as they provided something truly unique that we never got to experience on other consoles. With all of the other systems, even in the modern day presence, nothing beats the PlayStation for its unique mix of giving players not just access to games, but to give them samples of experiences that could make decisions on whether they wanted to buy a game or just to play it for what it was. No other console had ever given you that true authentic experience by giving you these samples. So the PlayStation is definitely the best console ever for that alone. With its marketing ideas and concepts, the demo discs alone were the forerunner in being able to bring light to many of these iconic titles, and just to the console alone. So the demos are just as important as the games themselves, and for many of us growing up, we had an abundance of collection of discs that we still would often go back to play, more so than the original titles themselves, as they just hold so many memorable concepts and memories that we truly will never forget. So if you're a fan of these demo discs, I highly recommend that you go back and try them, as they do present something different and they will allow you to relive that nostalgia. There's just something about them that you really won't get anywhere else. And for those reasons alone, I would love to know your thoughts on this demo disc, if you have tried it yourself, or what other type of demo discs were you a fan of back in the day that you really enjoyed. So be sure to share it down in the comments below. And if you have enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel and hit that bell to be updated with future content. And if you would like to see more videos around many of the other unique and quirky style demo discs that were released over the years of the PlayStation, then keep an eye out, as more will be on the way. But you can also check out the playlist on screen for other games and demo discs that I have covered on the channel to see more of those unique concepts in action. And as always, keep those gaming memories alive.